Thank you for joining us today. My name is Steve Wolfenbarger, and I'm the Education Manager for AHOA. As we continue our series on the impact of the hospitality industry due to COVID-19, we're happy to have an industry expert that many of you already know, Tarun Kapoor, Managing Director of Kapoor and Kapoor Hospitality. You may have also already been exposed to his expansive knowledge as the facilitator of AHOA's most popular education workshops, how to form a management company, how to develop a hotel, and financing for your hotel. As we recently concluded our previous webinar series with Tarun, the question of incentives came up, and we decided to do another three-part series that we will end with an understanding of incentives. In today's webinar, we will discuss proven performance management processes defined by key performance indicators for hotels. We'll also give an understanding of incorporating the fundamental principles of goal setting, accountability, and feedback. Now, before handing this over to Tarun, I'd like to read this disclaimer for all of those listening to this presentation. AHOA does not provide legal or business advice or representation to any individual persons or members. AHOA goes to great lengths to ensure the information it provides is accurate and useful, but strongly recommends all persons obtain professional advice and/or legal representation which is appropriate for their particular situations. Further, AHOA does not endorse any companies nor any of the products or services they offer. There will be a Q&A available at the end of the presentation. For any questions that you may have, please type them into the questions section. We encourage you to take advantage of this time to ask what is on your mind, and don't be shy, but please note we may not get through all questions during our time. Also, we will make today's presentation available for all within 24 hours on our COVID-19 resource page. We're excited to have you all here today, so let's get the conversation going because I know Tarun has some great insights and practical advice to offer. Now, Tarun, we know you've done some consulting work and have frequent conversations with hoteliers in today's climate. So let's kick off with what is performance management?
So, I go back to, I think it was the late 70s when I was in grad school and in my MBA class, and I remember the teacher talking about performance management, and the term then was a relatively new term. But the way my professor explained it to me sort of has always stuck in my mind, and I don't know how many seminars and workshops I've done around performance management, and I don't know how strongly I can convince you that I believe in performance management. So to me, performance management simply is if I, as a manager, can sit down with any one of you as my associate or my employee, and together the two of us can agree on what it is you are supposed to accomplish, how it is you're supposed to accomplish it, and by when is it that you're supposed to accomplish it. If we can agree on those, and then how I am going to evaluate you and provide you with feedback. That's performance management. So literally put it another way, and I coined the term EAF, and I did seminars around EAF, which simply translates into expectations, the E for expectations, the A for accountability, and the F for feedback. So can you and I agree on your expectations? And then can we agree upon how we are going to measure those expectations? And can we agree upon the feedback mechanism so I can give you regular and timely feedback to help you do better? That, to me, Steve, is performance management.
Now, Tarun, with that, do you recommend if, as performance goes along, and if as climate changes, as we saw this year, do you recommend that you update those performance management guidelines so that everyone is still meeting what needs to happen for their organization?
Oh, without a doubt, Steve. I mean, life is organic, life is dynamic, and business is organic and business is dynamic. So, without a doubt, if you were running a 100-room Holiday Inn Express with 30 employees pre-COVID, and now you're dealing with 14 or 15 or less employees during COVID, without a doubt, performance management and those expectations have to evolve, and employees have to be able to see the evolution themselves and understand and appreciate the evolution. Things cannot be static. But I think it may help, Steve, to sort of break these three things as EAF and maybe drill them down a little bit. So when I'm talking about understanding what I expect somebody to do or what my expectations are, it is important that my expectations and your perception of my expectations are the same. And often we know expectations and perception are not the same. So what are expectations? Well, expectations to me, simply put in one word, are goals. What goal are you giving me? The problem with giving goals is we give big goals. We give grand goals. We don't give goals that the employee can understand, see, and realize how and what impact they are having on the business. So when I define expectations, expectations for my general manager are very different than expectations for my executive housekeeper, and they're very different than my expectations for my guest services associate or front desk agent or my guest room attendant or my housekeeping staff. They're very different. However, they have to be connected. So the question is, what are good goals for my general manager, and what are good goals for my department head, and what are good goals for my line employees? Now, before I answer that rhetorical question, let me say that if you do not connect the line employees' goals to the housekeeper's goals, to the general manager's goals, then there's a disconnect in the hotel, because all that matters is I focus on what I am doing, not on the hotel's goals. So realistically, let me just give you some simple goals for a general manager. Well, goal for you is to do, let's just say, $2.4 million in revenues this year. Well, where did I come up with $2.4 million in revenues? Well, last year you did $2.2 million in revenues, so I'm not stretching the goals. And the Star report is saying that my market, in whichever town in the country I am in, I live in Los Angeles or LA County, if they're saying we are expecting the market to, the RevPAR to grow by 5%, well, I'm going to take my $2.2 million and add 5% to it. And that's how I come up with my goal for this year. And then, to go back to the question that I know Steve is going to ask, with the COVID, obviously those numbers go out of the window, and now we have to come up with more realistic numbers for COVID, but I'll get to that in a moment. So I gave you a 2.2 goal or a 2.4 goal to the general manager, but that goal is too much for the general manager to remember, because it's for the whole year, and I'm already in August, and soon it's going to be September and October. So it might help if I can set the goals by the month. The shorter the period for the goal, the more the employee can see the goal. And if I can see the goal, I perceive your expectations. So I may say in the month of August, I expect you to give me $400,000 in revenue, but in the month of January, I expect you to give me $180,000 in revenue. So goal setting just for revenue, I have now broken it down by the month. When we look at that and then say, what other goals do I want my general manager to have? Well, clearly revenue or top line goals are not good enough. I need bottom line goals, or my net operating income goals, or my earnings before interest and taxes and depreciation, amortization, or EBITDA goals. And I might say to you, I expect $2.4 million from you in revenue, but I expect 40% in NOI or 50% in NOI, as the case may be. Now, can I do that? Maybe. Can I do that at the cost of uh, getting bad brand ratings and failing my QA? Well, what good is it? If I do that, getting bad TripAdvisor scores, what good is it? If I do that, getting bad Medallia scores, what good is it? So clearly, in the case of the general manager, I can put the top line and the bottom line, but now I have to set some other goals for these other areas that I've just listed. But let's just stay with these two so that you can see the connectivity between the general manager's top line and bottom line goals with the executive housekeeper's goals, because the GM has to connect to the housekeeper. So now I'm going to say to the housekeeper, your goal, my expectations of you for the month of August are that you spend no more than $19 per occupied room on your entire housekeeping budget, which includes labor, supplies, chemicals, amenities, etc. Again, just saying $19 per room, per occupied room, is not good enough. If I fail my inspections, if I get bad feedback from the customers, so what good is it, right? So those other things have to be in place, but I've just taken the $2.4 million with 40% NOI, and I've brought it down to $19 per room, cost per occupied room. And I'm saying, hey, housekeeper, from your salary to every room attendant salary to every laundryman salary to everybody's salary and all the guest room amenities and all the supply costs, I will take for the month of August, I will divide that by the number of room nights we sold, and I'm going to come up with the cost per occupied room. And that's where I came up with $19, because $19 is what you've been averaging in July, in June, and yeah. So now I have connected the housekeeper's goals with the general manager's goals. Now the housekeeper can't give me $19 per occupied room consistently over the month if the room attendants who are cleaning the room are either cleaning bad, leaving too many supplies in the room, wasting too much chemicals, or taking too much time to clean the room. So I'm now going to say that, hey, room attendant, I need you to focus on 26 minutes per room. Every time you clean a room, I'm going to give you 26 minutes per room. So that 26 minutes per room is now connected with the $19 per occupied room for the housekeeper, which is now connected to the 40% of the $2.4 million to the general manager. So if you can connect these dots, and if the staff in your hotel can see what impact I, as a room attendant, am having on the profitability of the hotel, wow, because I normally just come into the hotel and all you tell me to do is clean, 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 and hurry up and clean everything and clean it correctly. And all you're telling me to do is use my hands and my legs, but you're really not making me feel good because I don't see how I'm connected to the expectations of the hotel. Okay.
Yeah, excuse me. I think that's great because it really gives ownership to that employee, and they really want to make a difference for not only the hotel but also the guests, and they really feel that they're making a difference. So I love how you tied the GM into another employee because everyone has an impact, whether you're an entry level employee all the way to the top level. So that's really awesome to hear. Um, Now, you talked about how to set those goals. How do you hold the individuals accountable so that you make sure that those goals are being met?
So before I answer the how to, I think critical to this discussion is there must be a system in place that allows me to monitor my numbers in this particular case. So for the top line numbers, every property management system, branded or non-branded, will tell you what your sales were right up till August 25th. I'll know how I'm trending and am I going to make my $400,000? Am I trending to make my $400,000? So the top line numbers are easy to get, readily available. As long as you do a night audit or get a printout from your PMS, you can do that. Where it starts to get more tricky is to start to say that bottom line number, that net operating income number, which means I have to have an accounting system in place, a labor costing system in place to be able to track those numbers. So even though my numbers as of August 25th in terms of expenses will never be 100% accurate, but I will have my finger on the pulse and I'll be able to monitor whether I'm trending to make my 40% of $400,000 at the end of the month. Now, so if you are a hotel owner and your GMs don't have access to the books, they're not seeing your accounting system, they're not seeing a running day-to-day profit and loss statement, and all the new technologies that I talked in my last series of webinars, whether it's M3 or AppTech or Sage or whatever, they all do this. But you have to have a general manager who's capable of going into the system and looking and understanding at numbers. That's just for the GM. Now, when you go into the housekeeper, now at minimum, I'm going to now jump down for a moment to minutes per room. You need a system that says every day, how many hours did I work and how many rooms did I clean? Now, those two you know because you got my time and attendance and you know how many rooms I've cleaned. So you could just set up a simple spreadsheet if you're not using software like Mops or Hot Sauce or Core, but you could set up a simple spreadsheet, give it to your night auditor and say, you know what, at the end of the night, just take the hours that Tarun worked and the rest of the housekeeping staff worked and divide them by the number of rooms each one cleaned, so you can get a minutes per room for the hotel and you can get a minutes per room for Tarun. So if that data can be easily calculated, so the GM or the housekeeper doesn't have to spend an hour trying to fill out some spreadsheets and come up with some numbers, if the night auditor can do this, who's got all the time on their hands. In any case, in that case now, when I come in the morning and I'm the executive housekeeper, and when I have my staff coming in and I'm having a huddle, now I'm looking at Tarun and I'm saying, Tarun, your minutes per room were the best in the hotel as of yesterday or the worst in the hotel as of yesterday. And Tarun, you better shape up and you need to speed up, etc. You can do the exact same thing with an inspection. You can inspect my rooms, every one of my rooms or random rooms of mine, and you can score the inspection sheet, and you can say, Tarun, while you take longer in cleaning rooms, your inspection scores are better. So now all you need to do is worry about speeding up. To somebody else, you may be saying, hey, Steve, you need to improve your quality. You're doing things so fast, but you're just not paying attention to detail. So I've showed you the GM. I showed you the line employee. Now the department heads in the middle, because they are calculating not just the labor cost that was incurred as of August 25th, but they're also tracking all the supplies that they're using, which we track in terms of how many boxes of soap or how many bed sheets did we buy this month, and that gets costed into my profit and loss statement. So the question that you asked, Steve, it's a very long, drawn out answer to your question is, I have to have a system in place that's easy to use that generates the data. And if the system generates the data, then I just have to have a practice in place for me to share that data with my staff, which goes to the F part of the EAF, which is the feedback. So feedback doesn't mean good job, I love your work, I love you, Tarun. All that's good. We have to do that. But feedback really means diagnose my work. If my speed is good, but my quality of cleaning is bad, which part of my quality of cleaning is bad? Is it in the room or is it in the bathroom? And if you can show me that, then I will pay much more attention tomorrow when I go back into cleaning the bathroom to say, oh my God, typically my bathtubs are never clean. Everybody else's are, so I just need to work a little harder on my bathtubs. That's feedback. Feedback, the more specific the feedback, the more measurable the feedback, the more powerful the feedback is. I was a very long answer, Steve, but I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. Now, I probably should have asked this on the last question, but what if an employee says, hey, I agree with these goals, but I think maybe we should adjust it to this. How do you handle something like that?
So first of all, you're never going to get Steve and Tarun to perform at par, whatever that means. We are just not going to achieve the same score. We don't run at the same speed. We don't have the same movement. We don't have the same age. We don't have the same body mass. We don't have any of the things. So there is going to be ups and downs. The question is, they say feedback is the breakfast of champions. So if you buy into the premise that feedback is the breakfast of champions, then the more feedback you give me, the more timely the feedback you give me, the more specific the feedback you give me, the more I'm going to be motivated to improve my feedback. Based on your feedback, am I going to be willing to improve? So it's actually a very good question, Stephen. I want to go on a tangent for a moment, if I may. Let's just say the hotel is achieving $19 cost per occupied room. However they're doing it, that was a goal I set for my executive housekeeper, and however this person, man or woman, is getting their staff to do it, they're pulling it off. But in that staff, there's a guy by the name of Steve, and there's a guy by the name of Tarun, and Tarun's quality scores suck, and Steve's speed scores suck. So the question is, if I can improve Steve's speed, and if I can improve Tarun's quality, then my medallia scores for the hotel are going to go up, and my $19 might drop to $18.75. Because we cleaned the rooms faster, and you, Steve, saved me 25 cents per room. there lies the motivation. So the more diagnostic your feedback is, either Steve is going to be motivated to do something, or if Steve just doesn't give a damn, he probably won't do anything. Every now and then you're going to have an employee who just doesn't give a damn. They come in as a robot and they do their work and they go. But what's going to happen with that robot is Tarun's going to say to Steve, and the other 8 people in housekeeping are going to say to Steve that you are pulling the team down. This is a team effort. The $19 was a team goal. So how the executive housekeeper uses the data to motivate Steve is a matter of understanding Steve's personality. What buttons to push in Steve have to be different than what buttons to push in Tarun. This is not a drill sergeant behavior. This is a very personalized behavior. But the data allows you to provide that personalized feedback. Expectations, accountability, and feedback. That's what makes performance reach potentially its optimum. You know, these premises are based on the concept of sports and teams. If you stop and think about the playoffs that are going with the NBA right now, while you're watching the game, the commentators and the scoreboard is not just saying which team is leading or not, it's also giving statistics of each player. Statistics of each one of the players in both the teams are being flashed up for us to see. Not only are we seeing it, but that player is seeing the statistic. I would argue that in the heat of that 2.5-hour game that game is being played, with the aggressiveness that game is being played, I would argue the efficiency of sharing the statistics is going to make a LeBron James just a tad bit better. You take that statistic away during this next game, and just to say, we'll tell you at the end of the game who won and who lost. We won't tell you during. I would argue LeBron James' capability will drop. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Monitoring performance is about providing continuous feedback day by day by day by day by day. The day you stop doing it, that's the day I doze off.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And feedback is such an interesting concept because how you take feedback may be different than how I take feedback. So how do you provide that relevant feedback so that it does improve the productivity for that individual that may need it a little bit different than, say, someone like me?
So there's 2 parties to the feedback, right? There's the person providing the feedback and there's the person receiving the feedback. So the person providing the feedback has a personality. You have a personality, I have a personality. Your personality is not like mine, and who am I to say mine is better or worse than yours? But we have a personality. So how you are going to communicate feedback has to play off your strengths, and you have to work on your communication weaknesses. What you can't do, personality aside, what you can't do is come in and say, Tarun, do better. Or Tarun, work harder. Or Tarun, you're not performing good enough. Well, thank you very much, but I sweat for 2.5 hours in the game, and all you have to tell me is I need to do better. You couldn't tell me what I didn't do better, right? If you can't tell me what I didn't do better, how the hell do you expect me to do better? So the system of providing accountability is the system of collecting the data to be able to give the employee the right feedback. Now, the other part of this puzzle is the person receiving the feedback. So let's say, Steve, you are the employee and I'm the manager and I'm giving you feedback. You know, the cliche that we've all heard, this is my personality, this is my style, this is how I do it. So, Steve, you are my employee, just shut up and put up with my personality. Well, you know, that doesn't cut the mustard anymore. Right? I mean, Steve's not going to work for me. Even in the COVID era, he's going to get out and walk across the street and go somewhere else because he's not going to take it. So I have to a great extent, be able to understand what drives you and how you need to be communicated to. So the message is the same, which is what do I need you to improve? But it's how I get the message to you that takes talent. So what makes a good manager or a good leader different from somebody who's not so good is in the fact that they customize the message. Not the data behind the message, but they customize the message.
Absolutely. I think that's very important. And I think it also makes you a successful manager if you're able to give that communication and feedback to your staff in the way that helps them be successful. So I think that's great. Well, we've only received one question, Tarun, but if anybody has additional, please type it in because we'd love to hear from you today. But this person said that they added another housekeeper into their staff, and they said, should we give them the same goals or should we update everyone's?
Good question. Actually, it's a very good question. So there's one thing to be talking about the goal as a weighted average for the department. So if I'm saying 26 minutes per room and an inspection score of 90 or higher is the weighted average that I want the department to do, that's my goal for the head of housekeeping to achieve.
Okay.
However, the only way the head of housekeeping is going to achieve that goal is going to look at Steve and look at Tarun and individually see what help, assistance, feedback, training does Steve need and what training, assistance, feedback does Tarun need. Right? So it's very likely that if you have 6 ladies working in housekeeping today, that not all 6's scores are identical. So new employees automatically are handicapped because they don't know the rhythm of the hotel. They don't know the geography of the hotel. They don't know the routine of the hotel. They don't know where to get their supplies. And it's going to take them some while to fall into the way our rooms are made, the way our brand requires us to do the rooms. So it's very likely that I'm not going to achieve 26 minutes per room, hit the ground running on day one. So you may want to tell me when you're doing my training and when you're doing my initiation, hey, Tarun, we expect you to get to 26 minutes per room and an inspection score of 90. I'm going to give you 2 weeks, Tarun. I know you came from ABC competitor hotel down the street. It's a great hotel. I know you got the experience, but I'm going to give you 2 weeks. Time deadline. I'm going to give you 2 weeks. So, and first day you clean rooms. Hey, Tarun, you did 32 minutes. Hey, Tarun, you did 75 in your inspection score. Oh my God, I got 11 days left. So the goal setting with the timeline, the daily feedback, and the diagnostic, do this better, do this, will help me get to that goal. So yes, new employees, trainees, pull the weighted score down. So if I had my wish, I would love to keep my stars and never lose them. and not have to have the cost of training and the cost of turnover. The cost of turnover is the training cost, is the loss of productivity.
Yep, and that can be very costly in the long run. We did get another question, so thank you very much. It says, any suggestion on softwares or resources for owner-operated hotel to track performance? We're a Comfort Inn with 73 rooms, and we'd like to organize performance and expectations.
So, I mean, the cheapest thing you can do is create some Excel spreadsheets and manually enter the data into the spreadsheet and have the night auditor who's staying awake or struggling to stay awake to be able to create the data for you. That's the cheapest no-brainer. Some data you'll get from your PMS through choice, some data you will get through your time clock, and some data you will get from your purchasing, which is all the invoices that you're receiving. That being said, almost every other system that you can buy, again, if you attended my last session, we were talking about systems that are asset management systems, such as Core or such as Hot Sauce and MOPS. All of these systems can very easily calculate inspection scores and can very easily calculate minutes per room, just to take two. So if you are inclined to put systems, the reason why I'm a proponent of systems, and I don't care which system, every system has its pros and cons, but I'm a proponent of systems because what system does, which is a very important point actually, it allows me to see my data before you tell me my data. So it allows me to self-assess my performance because I can see it. And that self-assessment is actually very empowering. So even though buying some of these systems may add another $500 a month to your subscription fees, these are all subscription-based services, they are pretty powerful in terms of paying for themselves very quickly.
So it sounds like, Tarun, with what you just mentioned, if I'm able to see my performance, that's going to make me want to do better. And then in the long run, I would think it would improve your hotel's guest scores. Because if I'm proud of taking ownership, my GM is proud of what we're doing. That's going to just really improve down the road everything.
So yes, Steve, I think profit and I think guest scores, your Medallia scores or TripAdvisor scores are outcomes. They are not inputs, they're outcomes. They are outcomes of how you run your team. If you run your team with this data readily available, they will produce the outcome and you will be happy. So when I say spend $500 on a subscription, the input is the $500 in a system. The input is the procedure that system will force your staff to follow to be able to track things. The outcome will be either the employee who doesn't like to be tracked will leave your hotel because they find that too frustrating. So 1 out of 5 will leave you. But 4 out of 5 will say, oh my God, now I know why my boss has been telling me what my boss has been telling me. Now I see it. And you actually produce better outputs. So absolutely.
Awesome. So I know you're not here to promote any particular systems, but this individual has asked, do you have any systems that you would suggest to purchase?
Well, you need actually 2 levels of systems. Okay. One is you need a real-time accounting system. And the real-time accounting system will give you the ultimate profit and loss numbers pretty consistently throughout the month. At the end of the month, you'll get a completed audited number, but during the month, you'll get pretty decent usable numbers. So the first thing that I would suggest you investigate if you don't have an accounting software is an accounting software that will give you real-time data. And to get real-time data, you have to input real-time data, which means you have to input invoices every day, input your time and attendance every day, etc. So the top systems that are commercially known and that thousands of users, I think M3 is probably the most common. I think AppTech, which uses things like ProfitSword and is probably the second most popular. And then there is probably 10 or 15 very good systems out there that are purely hotel accounting systems. And in terms of cost, the ultimate cost to you might vary between 100 and $150 a month, period. So if one's going to cost you 500, the other might cost you 350, but give or take, it's in that range. So the first thing you need is an accounting software. The second thing you need are the interrelated softwares that will allow you to track other things. So I'm loosely calling them asset management software. These are the softwares that link the front office with housekeeping, with maintenance. If you can link those three departments together and track how much time and money is being spent on repairs, how much time and money is being spent on cleaning the rooms, how much time and money is being spent on handling customer complaints, etc., etc. Those asset management software, I've sort of listed three for you already. You have, I think, Core, which is probably the biggest, QUORE, MOPS, just like it sounds, MOPS, Hot Sauce, just like it sounds, Hot Sauce. These are probably the more common systems. And I will tell you today, almost every brand, major brand, or top 3 or 4 companies are all in the process of mandating some sort of customized asset management software that links to their brand. So it's coming. They've already demonstrated who their preferred vendors are, but it's coming from all the brands in the next year or two. So I'm only maybe speaking a year or two ahead, but it's coming.
You're always ahead of the curve, so we appreciate that. And Tarun, those were all the questions that we received at this time. So we want to thank you and Kapoor Hospitality for this very informative webinar. And we also want to thank everyone who joined us today. We encourage you to tune in on Wednesday, September 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern Time to hear another webinar from Tarun about strategies for optimizing your organization. Also, feel free to check out our AHOA COVID-19 resource page on the ahoa.com for future webinars and also for past webinars we have done. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we hope to see you all join us for future webinars and AHOA events. Thank you, Tarun.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.